There's something uniquely charged about the final words exchanged before a fight, not because they're louder or more dramatic, but because they're closer to the truth. At that point, everything that could be said has already been said. The promotion is done, the narratives are built, the back and forth has played out. What's left isn't performance, it's mindset. It's the last glimpse into where each fighter stands mentally before everything shifts from talk to action. And in the case of Fabio Wardley and Daniel Dubois, those final statements don't feel like routine pre-fight comments, they feel heavier, more deliberate, almost stripped of anything unnecessary. Because this isn't just about selling a fight anymore. It's about expressing intent. About making it clear, in the simplest terms, what each man believes is about to happen when they step into the ring. You can hear the difference in tone. There's less exaggeration, less need to convince anyone watching. Instead, there's focused, direct, controlled, and grounded. The kind of words that aren't meant to impress, but to reflect preparation, confidence, and readiness. For Wardley, it might come through as quiet determination, a belief built on momentum and self-assurance. For Dubois, it may carry a sense of purpose, shaped by experience, setbacks, and the drive to prove something deeper. And that's what gives these moments their intensity. Because beneath the surface, there's tension that's been building long before this final exchange. Not just from the promotion, but from everything leading up to it, the paths they've taken, the expectations surrounding them, the stakes attached to the outcome. All of that is compressed into a few final sentences, where nothing more needs to be added. This is the moment where words stop being part of the show and start becoming a reflection of reality. Because once those final statements are made, there's no more explaining, no more building, no more delay. Just the fight, and whatever those words were worth when it finally begins. There's a different kind of intensity in the final words before a fight, quieter on the surface, but heavier underneath, because they mark the exact point where everything transitions from preparation to reality. Up until then, fighters have time to explain, to promote, to build narratives around what might happen. But in those last moments, that space disappears. What's left is simple. What they believe, how they feel, and what they're ready to do when there's nothing left but the fight itself. With Fabio Wardley and Daniel Dubois, those final statements carry even more weight because they don't exist in isolation, they're the product of everything that's come before. The build-up, the expectations, the subtle tension that's developed over time, it all feeds into those last words. And you can feel that they're not being said for effect anymore. There's no need to sell anything at that stage. The focus shifts from convincing others to confirming something within themselves. That's why the tone changes. It becomes more direct, more controlled, almost stripped back to its core. Each word feels intentional, not exaggerated. There's a sense of clarity in how they speak, a reflection of the work already done, the preparation already completed. Wardley's words might carry quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to be loud to be real. Dubois' tone might reflect determination, shaped by experience and the need to prove exactly where he stands. And in that moment, both fighters are no longer speaking to each other, or even to the audience in the same way. They're speaking from a place of focus. Because once those words are out, there's nothing left to add. No adjustments, no more statements, no more build-up. Just action. Just execution. That's what makes these moments so powerful. They're not about hype anymore. They're about truth. And within that brief exchange, you get a final, unfiltered glimpse of two fighters standing on the edge of the same moment, ready to find out whose intent holds up when everything is put to the test. Daniel Dubois, on the other hand, brings a completely different kind of presence into those final moments, one that doesn't rely on subtlety, but instead feels direct, grounded, and unmistakably forceful. Where some fighters speak with measured calm, Dubois' words tend to carry a sharper edge, a sense of intensity that mirrors exactly how he approaches things inside the ring. There's no need to dress it up or overcomplicate it. What he says comes across as straightforward, almost heavy, as if every word is backed by the same physical intent he brings to his punches. That alignment between voice and style is what makes his presence stand out. Because when Dubois speaks, it doesn't feel like he's trying to create energy, it feels like he already has it, contained but ready. There's a seriousness in his tone, a focus that suggests he's not concerned with the narrative anymore, only with the outcome. It's not about proving confidence through words, it's about reinforcing it. The kind of confidence that doesn't need to be explained in detail, because it's rooted in preparation, power, and a clear objective once the fight begins. And that's where the contrast with Fabio Wardley becomes especially interesting. Wardley may carry a more composed, controlled delivery, while Dubois brings that raw, direct intensity, and when those two approaches exist side by side, it creates a dynamic that adds another layer to the build-up. It shows that confidence doesn't have a single form. One fighter can express it through calm assurance, the other through forceful intent, and both can be equally real, equally dangerous. That contrast doesn't just make the moment more engaging, it sharpens it. Because it highlights that this isn't just a clash of physical styles. It's a clash of mindsets. Two different ways of preparing, two different ways of expressing readiness, both leading to the same place where words stop mattering, and only actions remain. What makes these final exchanges so compelling is how everything unnecessary seems to fall away, almost naturally, until only the core message remains. There's no room left for long explanations, no space for layered promotion or carefully constructed narratives. By this point, all of that has already done its job. What's left is something much more direct, something stripped down to intention, focus, and belief. And that simplicity is exactly what gives the moment its power. Because when fighters speak at this stage, they're not trying to impress, they're trying to express. Every word carries weight because it's been reduced to what actually matters. There's no need to overcomplicate it. A few sentences, sometimes even a few words, can say more than an entire build-up ever could. It's clarity in its purest form. You can feel that shift in how the moment is received as well. The audience isn't listening for entertainment anymore, they're listening for meaning. For signs of confidence, for hints of doubt, for anything that reveals where each fighter truly stands mentally. And because the message is so focused, it becomes easier to connect with, easier to interpret, and ultimately, more impactful. It also creates a kind of stillness before everything changes. A pause where both fighters, in their own way, are acknowledging what's about to happen. Not through hype, but through presence. Through the understanding that the next time they're seen, it won't be about words at all, it will be about action. And that's why this simplicity matters so much. Because in a sport filled with noise, build-up, and constant attention, these final exchanges cut through all of it. And leave behind only the truth each fighter is ready to stand on. At this stage, words stop being about shaping how others see the fight and start becoming something far more personal, tools to lock in focus, to reinforce belief, and to steady the mind before everything shifts into action. The audience might still be listening, but the purpose has changed. These final statements aren't really for the cameras anymore, they're for the fighter themselves. Because stepping into the ring at that level isn't just physical, it's deeply mental. Every fighter reaches a point, right before the fight, where everything has already been done. The training is complete, the strategy is set, the preparation can't go any further. What remains is mindset. And in that moment, even a few words can serve as an anchor, something to center attention, to block out distractions, to reinforce exactly what they're about to do and why. That's why these statements often sound so direct, so controlled. They're not filled with extra detail because they don't need to be. They're built around certainty. Around reminding themselves of their preparation, their readiness, and their intent. It's a way of narrowing everything down to a single point of focus before stepping into an environment where chaos, pressure, and emotion will all collide at once. And this internal process is easy to overlook from the outside. Fans hear the words, but they don't always see what those words are doing beneath the surface. They don't see how they help regulate nerves, sharpen concentration, or reinforce confidence in a moment where doubt can be just as present as belief. But for the fighter, that mental alignment can make a real difference once the fight begins. Because when the bell rings, there's no time to think things through from scratch. You rely on what's already been built, physically and mentally. And sometimes, those final words are the last step in putting that mental foundation exactly where it needs to be, before everything is put to the test. There's also a subtle layer of psychological positioning happening in these final moments, one that isn't always obvious, but can still play a role before a single punch is thrown. Because even though the focus has shifted inward, fighters are still aware that their words are being heard by their opponent, and that awareness can influence how they choose to present themselves. It's not about mind games in the loud, exaggerated sense, it's much more controlled than that. A calm, confident tone can signal composure and readiness, suggesting that nothing about the moment feels overwhelming. A more direct, intense delivery can project aggression and intent, hinting at what's coming once the fight begins. Neither approach is accidental. Even in simplicity, there's a message being sent about mindset, about confidence, about how each fighter sees the challenge in front of them. And those messages, even if subtle, can shape expectations. An opponent might pick up on that energy, whether it's steadiness, urgency, or controlled aggression, and factor it into how they mentally prepare. It won't decide the fight, but at this level, even small psychological edges can matter. The way a fighter carries themselves, the certainty in their words, the absence of hesitation, all of it contributes to the overall picture being presented before the bell rings. What makes this interesting is that it's often happening on two levels at once. On the surface, it's a public exchange, something for fans and media to observe. But underneath, it's a quiet interaction between two competitors, each aware of the other, each sending signals in their own way, even if those signals are minimal. And that's what adds another layer to these final moments. Because before the physical contest begins, there's already a mental one taking place, where perception, confidence, and intent are being tested without a single move being made. As the fight draws closer, those final words start to carry a different kind of weight because they no longer exist on their own. They become a bridge, a clear dividing line between everything that's been done in preparation and everything that's about to be tested in reality. Up until that point, it's all been theory, training, planning, imagining scenarios. But now, those words sit right at the edge of something real. And that's what makes them feel heavier with each passing second. Because once they're spoken, there's no going back to refine them or add context. They stand as they are, simple, direct, and final. They represent the mindset a fighter is choosing to carry into the ring, the last piece of mental preparation before everything shifts into action. In that sense, they're not just statements, they're commitments. You can feel the transition happening in that moment. The noise of the build-up starts to fade. The distractions fall away. What remains is focus, narrowed down to the opponent, the strategy, and the task ahead. Those final words help lock that focus in place, acting almost like a switch being flipped from preparation mode to performance mode. And once that switch is flipped, everything changes. Because the next time we see these fighters, it won't be about what they said, it'll be about what they do. The words don't disappear, though. They stay in the background, adding context to every movement, every exchange, every decision made under pressure. That's why their significance becomes clearer right before the fight begins. They're not just part of the build-up anymore. They're the final step in crossing from what was planned into what actually happens. For fans, these final moments do more than just build anticipation, they offer a rare window into something that usually stays hidden, the mental state of the fighters right before everything is put on the line. It's easy to focus on the physical side of boxing, the power, the speed, the conditioning, but moments like these pull attention toward the psychological side, where confidence, focus, and composure quietly shape what's about to happen. And that insight changes how the fight is experienced. Because when you've heard those final words, when you've seen the tone, the body language, the level of certainty or intensity, it adds context to everything that follows. A calm, controlled statement might make you watch for discipline and patience in the ring. A more forceful, direct message might make you expect aggression, urgency, or dominance. Suddenly, you're not just watching actions, you're connecting them back to mindset. That connection adds depth. It turns the fight into more than just a physical contest. It becomes a mental one as well, where fans start to recognize how preparation translates into performance, how confidence holds up under pressure, and how composure can influence key moments. Even subtle things, how a fighter reacts after a missed shot, how they handle a difficult exchange, start to feel more meaningful when you've already had that glimpse into their mindset. It also creates a stronger sense of involvement. Fans aren't just observing from the outside, they feel like they understand something more, something beneath the surface. And that makes every moment more engaging, because it's not just about what is happening. It's about why it's happening. In the end, that's what these moments add to the experience. They bring the mental side of the sport into focus. And once you see that, you can't watch a fight the same way again. The contrast between Wardley and Dubois doesn't just add variety, it actively drives the narrative forward, creating a sense of unpredictability that lingers right up to the opening bell. Because when two fighters approach the same moment with completely different mindsets, it becomes difficult to anticipate how those differences will actually play out once everything becomes real. Wardley's more composed, measured presence suggests control, patience, and the ability to adapt as the fight unfolds. It gives the impression of someone who is comfortable letting the fight develop, reading situations, and making adjustments in real time. On the other side, Dubois' direct and forceful energy points toward a more assertive approach, one built on imposing himself early, setting the tone, and testing whether that intensity can break through before the fight has a chance to settle. And that's where the uncertainty comes in. Because both approaches are valid, but they lead to very different types of fights. If Wardley is able to manage the pace and keep things structured, the fight could evolve into something tactical, where timing and decision-making become key. But if Dubois is able to establish his presence early and maintain that intensity, the fight could shift into something far more physical, where pressure and power start to dictate the terms. What makes it compelling is that there's no clear answer beforehand. The final words give insight into mindset, but they don't reveal how those mindsets will hold up under pressure, fatigue, and real resistance. That's the unknown. That's what keeps the tension alive. Because until the fight actually begins, it's all potential. Two different approaches. Two different energies. Two different ways of preparing for the same moment. And the question that hangs over everything is simple. Which one will take control when it matters most?